Hello, welcome to Cory is Wrong About the Prequels, Clone Wars Season 7, the final arc, the Siege of Mandalore. We are finally done with Clone Wars, everybody. Little sad time. We're finally done with this show. And by finally, I mean we did 3 episodes on it, plus one a while back, so it's not like it's been that long. But Clone Wars itself, a long time in the making, so we are here to discuss the final 4 episodes of the Clone Wars. And today, joining me as always, the titular Cory.
Hello.
Chris returning.
What's up?
And we have a very special guest making his debut here on Thoughts from Woo Anything. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Austin, Cory's friend.
Hello, Austin. Do you here now that you're on the show? Do you agree that Cory is wrong about basically everything?
About Star Wars and the prequels, yes.
There you go. You're then you're welcome here. So last week we talked about the middle 4 episodes, the Ahsoka spice running arc, and today we will be discussing the final 4 episodes, the Siege of Mandalore. However, going to be slightly different this week. In the first 2 arcs, we sort of deviated a little what we do normally and talked about these as arcs of television, specifically 4 episodes. We did end up giving a rating about an arc, and that felt right for those particular episodes, the Bad Batch and the Spice Running. This, on the other hand, I don't think of as 4 episodes of television or an arc. I think of this as a movie. This is an hour-long Star Wars movie. And I think I want to talk about this from that context, as though this was Star Wars Episode 3.5, The Siege of Mandalore. Do you guys agree, though, that this is basically just a little 4-episode movie that happens to have episode breaks?
That's how I watched it.
Yeah. I mean, that was the intent. I think they're going to actually structure it into one full movie, and like even the way the episode starts, like the Lucas film start, I think there's no doubt that's what the creators intended to.
Yeah.
It's obviously different than the rest of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yes and no, because, I mean, it's still structured. It's still definitely structured like 4 episodes.
That's true, but I still think that this carries, and maybe, part of it just it as how good it is, but I still feel like this, as it's built, feels very cohesive as a movie. Like, you can obviously watch this as 4 episodes, and I think most of us, well, maybe not Chris, watched it originally as it was airing as 4 episodes. And sure, each episode does have, sort of a beginning and middle and end, but it does feel, to me, more so than the other 2 arcs that were sort of very clearly connected episodes. This feels like one particular story. The story of Rex and Ahsoka going to Mandalore, and then the unfolding of Order 66.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
I watched by the way, I watched 9 and 10 together, then 11 and 12 as they came out.
Okay.
God, I was on it as soon as they were airing.
I'm still finishing those.
I was still yelling at him to actually finish the series because he started watching the series, 2 months ago?
I watched all of this during quarantine. The entire series.
And Rebels, for that matter.
Yeah, half watching Rebels. I had it on while I was playing TFT most of the time and just finished the whole thing without realizing it.
For Rebels, they just compiled all of Ahsoka's parts of it into a 40-minute video on Disney XD, so you can just watch it on YouTube. Those are the important parts.
It was.
It's that, and Cory would be upset if we didn't mention Thrawn. You gotta watch Thrawn stuff.
Oh my god.
Thrawn, Agent Callus was great. There's a lot of good things in Rebels.
All right, so part 1, and as Cory mentioned at the very start, we have the return of a Lucasfilm limited production. Clearly just trying to just hype up just how important this is, just how centralized this is, and how much Filoni really clearly thought of this and this arc as his real thing for this final season of Clone Wars, and to truly wrap up Clone Wars.
Did they do that in the movie originally? The same exact way, or no?
I'm pretty sure it's the same as the original airing of the movie. Also, just having that little in the very first one where Ahsoka's theme plays right as it ends, that I really enjoyed as connecting just that little musical connection. So right at the start, we are kind of delivered with like the thing Cory wanted absolute most, with seeing Plo Koon and what's her name, Aayla Secura off in the Outer Ring sieges, thinking, oh my God, they're like, that's where we are. This is what's happening. Cory, how did you feel when you saw that frame?
It's exactly what I wanted. And not only that, I think everyone mentioned this in like the live comment things I was seeing on Twitter, but Grievous, that's the best Grievous has ever looked. Like, he looked menacing and scary.
Which I think is a perfect encapsulation of General Grievous, that the best he looks is a half-second frame in this animated show. They did Grievous so dirty in the movies.
I mean, I feel like that's only because we have the Getty Tartarovsky cartoon to base Grievous off of. If you watched that and then watch the movie, yeah, that's super disappointing. But like, for people who maybe aren't as hardcore Star Wars fans, they're like, oh, it's a robot that coughs. Cool.
Yeah.
It's a robot that coughs.
That's
basically
very true. Very, very true. Also, small, as we were kind of joking a little bit about Rebels at the start, we get to see a young Kanan Jarrus back when he was called Caleb Doom at the meeting. That was a nice little Easter egg there.
Side note, though, for people who've watched Rebels, the wolves that like constantly say "doomed" Ezra, it just always made me think of Miss Bitters being like "doom, doom." From Invader Zim.
So one thing I noted just like right at the start, listening to kind of the sort of this show's version of an opening crawl, the kind of previously on, so to speak, is just how much like information and how important everything that's said within that little like a couple of lines of dialogue. Like right off the bat, getting to see like, okay, this is what the Outer Rim sieges are, which is the thing that Padme says to Anakin, like, I never knew when you were going to come back from the Outer Rim sieges, and also like understanding that this is fundamental to Palpatine's plan to get the Jedi as spread out as possible, allowing them to be significantly easier to pick off, is like really interesting. Just how much like usually these are kind of pretty meaningless little recaps, but there's like a lot of information going on in there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what this all sets up to in terms of where we are in terms of the war leading into Revenge of the Sith is just such a nice touch, because like this is like what I always said about the prequels, and like it's like George Lucas was in like a sandbox and made like really, I guess, shitty looking sandcastles, and then like these other creators come in and just like make it better. Like the whole idea of Order 66 and like was like a standalone from the prequels, just an idea that the clones were sleeper agents that would turn and attack the Jedi. But the whole idea with having chips in the brain and really building up what the plan was for more of a structural level comes from the Clone Wars, I think. And I think like a lot of like plot holes or like plot contrivances is just like touched up so well within the Clone Wars. It's just like insane to think about.
It's like how the Clone Wars was a throwaway line in the movie. He's like, yeah, you found the Clone Wars, right?
Yeah.
You didn't have to do anything with that.
But that's the thing. Everything in Star Wars now has a backstory. Like, there's nothing safe in Star Wars.
Cory and I had this debate last week of how, at times, this can get a little bit problematic. Where, like, do we necessarily need every little thing every line in Star Wars to become like the thing that births an entire movie? That said, the thing that I think Clone Wars does so well, though, to what Cory is saying, is that somehow it manages to do all of the stuff you were saying in terms of like fixing a lot of the problems with the prequels without actually changing anything, because there really aren't any major retcons unless you count like fundamentally changing the character of Anakin Skywalker, which is pretty big. But there's no like event retcons. Like it's not like Filoni's like, okay, I don't like how they do Order 66, I'm just gonna like completely change it. It's like, no, like Order 66 still unfolds exactly the same as it does, but adding in just extra bits of perspective really changes the framing of it and how we're able to view it as an audience. episode begins with a very fun little nostalgic trip. A group of clones trying to push across a bridge, and a fake surrender by a Jedi, which is just a straight callback to the very beginning of Clone Wars. This is one of the first scenes we see in the much maligned Clone Wars movie. But I do like it. I think it's a nice bookend to this, how the end of this show. But on top of that, with how dark and how just sort of emotionally draining the rest of this entire arc is, having this kind of very fun, upbeat, not particularly important start is really, like, I think it helps out a lot to sort of set the tone, and sort of, we needed that one last, like, gulp of joy before we go into, you know, some of the most, like, sort of emotionally taxing stuff in Star Wars. And I really enjoyed it. Is it silly? Yeah, it's silly. It's a little, you know, Anakin hams it up a little bit for to be Anakin, and you know, Obi-Wan is certainly where he is, but it's just that nice little bit of palate cleansing, little bit of, okay, let's have that last kind of gulp of joy before things go south.
Yeah.
Also, the first time you see them, it's in, like, I don't know how long, right? So it's like bring you back to exactly what they were. A little refresher.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just from a storytelling perspective, it basically is, again, just kind of like setting up the start to everything, and like why Ahsoka's going to be, you know, they're going to reach out to Ahsoka, Ahsoka's going to reach out to them eventually. It kind of gives a context for like everything that's going on. Like, we've seen what Ahsoka's been doing, we understand what Obi and Anakin are doing, and, you know, obviously things have changed since Ahsoka left, so it's like, you know, kind of building up that moment where they'll eventually, you know, meet again.
Mm-hmm. And then
get a haircut.
One other little thing in there, I think that one of the, as we were talking about, like, problems, so to speak, with Revenge of the Sith, Anakin in that movie comes off so whiny in how, like, everything's not fair. Why don't the doesn't the council, like, believe in me and all this stuff? And I think one of the reasons for that is that we don't really get to see much of Anakin at his full power. Like, other than killing Dooku, which in theory is, like, not actually something a Jedi should do, we get very little context for how great of a Jedi and great of a general Anakin is. And just sort of this last little bit of it, and of course throughout Clone Wars we see so much of it, but kind of that one last, you know, moment of Anakin just showing off and showing, like, how incredible he is at all of this, I think is important, because in order for the character of Anakin to work, in order for the Palpatine's manipulations to work, like, the Jedi actually have to be treating Anakin poorly. It doesn't really work if Anakin is just, like, this whiny kid. Instead, it actually is true. The Jedi really don't respect just how great Anakin is at the things that are, superficially at least, what he's supposed to be doing as a Jedi here.
I mean, I agree, but I also kind of disagree, because the opening of Revenge of the Sith was, I guess, in ways very similar to this, like with the whole flight scene, and, like, you know, Anakin was doing, like, these insane pilot moves, and then pretty much the entire scene of rescuing the Chancellor was Anakin at, like, full power, I think. So, I mean, I think those two scenes kind of, like, reflect each other a little bit.
But I think it's the difference of getting one scene at the very start of the movie in which all we're really thinking about is Anakin's choice to kill Dooku and how that all fits in, as opposed to something like this, which is just sort of, it's subtler, and it's adding up all these things in aggregate. Like, one of the things I think that, in a weird way, we actually do agree with is that Revenge of the Sith is clearly the strongest of the prequels. It does not have the same glaring problems that Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones do. But it still suffers from, one, coming off of those two movies, which gives it extremely little to work with. But on top of that, there's just not enough meat to provide context for the fall of what many people would say is the most, or maybe top 5 most iconic villains in the history of cinema.
Yeah. Well, also, I think for Revenge of the Sith, like if you look at the script just like in terms of it like on paper, right? Like, Anakin gets promoted to sitting on the council, but he doesn't get the rank of master, right? Like on paper that could work as like showing that the council and the Jedi don't trust Anakin and they're mistreating him. But it's a lot of like kind of show don't tell. Like you're only told about the situation, and in a movie that's not enough impact to kind of make him go fall as extremely as he does. Mm-hmm. And obviously the show, it like Clone Wars being a show, it has the kind of advantage of time of like, laying out the seeds of like, yeah, like Palpatine takes an interest in Anakin, or the Jedi do things to Anakin that are really shitty, like that whole Moralo Eval arc where Obi-Wan dies and goes undercover and they don't tell him about it. Like Like he almost kills Obi-Wan.
Yeah. It just
no, it'd be fine.
It's just little things like that. It's not like, okay, this one scene is everything. It's just one last reminder, and especially putting it in this time of, yeah, Anakin clearly deserves to be on the same level as Obi-Wan in terms of, if Obi-Wan is a master and on the council, there's really no reason for Anakin not to be at the same level.
Well, counterpoint
at least in Anakin's mind.
In Anakin's mind, sure. But, not that I'm the biggest fan of the Jedi Council, but, from their perspective, Anakin's temperament is kind of really shitty for a Jedi. Because there's that scene, and maybe I'm jumping ahead here, when Obi-Wan and Bo-Katan are talking to each other, and and Bo-Katan calls him out. It's like, I thought Satine meant something to you, Obi-Wan, and he's basically like, I can't let my feelings cloud my judgment. And you just kind of think, yeah, Anakin, take some notes here.
Yeah.
Well, they flashed to him during that scene too, actually.
Yeah. No, I agree with that, but I think the point of it, and the reason that I like this, and in this case, the Anakin on the bridge here, is that it's the dichotomy of the idealism of what the Jedi are supposed to be. The case of Anakin, not, holding back his emotions and making the right choice regardless of what he might feel and what someone means to him, juxtaposed with, they are generals in a war. And it's that Anakin is not excelling at the things that the Jedi Council view as the Jedi way, but he is excelling at all of the things he's being asked to do as a Jedi, as a general in the Grand Army of the Republic. And fundamentally, and at the end of this arc, we have a lot of discussion of sort of the hypocrisy and ethical quandary that is the Jedi as a military force. And I think that that's the big point here. Anakin is not, like, you're right that Anakin probably should not be a master by the letter of the law and the letter of the Jedi Council code, like what is of the way the Jedi view themselves. However, by everything he's being asked to do by the Council, which is essentially serving as the Joint Chiefs of Staff for a massive military operation, he's doing everything right. And I think that's what's so important here, as opposed to just, we get, as you said, like, we get told Anakin's good. Here we get to see that Anakin is clearly really good at this stuff. He's a really good general. Mm-hmm. But as you said, kind of transitioning right into we get a message from someone using the name Fulcrum, a nice little call out to a code name Ahsoka will use later on, as well as some others. But sort of, you mentioned a little bit of Anakin, cutting to Anakin's face. And in general, I just want to say how great the facial expressions are throughout this arc, and something that it definitely took Clone Wars some time to get to sort of get right. But I've always talked a lot, and anyone who's listened to anything we've said in Thoughts from Aunt Wu, is how much I adore the facial animations within Avatar. I think they do an incredible job there of really showing, giving a dense storytelling within facial expressions and body language within that show. And I think that finally we are at a point here where Clone Wars has sort of caught up to that standard, where they convey a lot of emotion in, especially Anakin's face throughout many of these moments, as well as Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Bo-Katan. I just think that they really, like, we talked a lot about them stepping up the animation, and we'll talk a ton about incredible animations sort of on the grand scale in just a minute. But on the more subtler side, I think that they've really found a style that works for them, and they do a really great job of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the style from, like, if we want to measure from, like, when, like, the movie came out in, like, what, 2008, like, obviously things have very much improved. You know, like, they've definitely smoothed out a lot of the harder edges that they use, and that probably comes from, like, better animation techniques, better technology, but, you know, the style of Clone Wars actually is kind of like a barrier for some people, because if you look at, like, the models from, like, season 1, like, it's rough.
Like, when I first started watching, like, you already gotta watch 6 seasons of this.
It took them some time to find a visual style, but now that if they've settled on this, I'd be very happy if this is just this can become the animated Star Wars style moving forward. So you already mentioned this, but Bo-Katan and Ahsoka enter, and Bo-Katan is asking the Obi-Wan and Anakin for assistance. And right off the bat, just like, this is a really big deal. The idea of someone who used to be in Death Watch and has views Mandalore trying to get back to their warrior ways, to be asking the Republic for assistance is a pretty big deal in the history of Mandalore.
And I something to also be curious about. Let's say this final operation wasn't going to come where they had to rescue the Chancellor. I mean, do you think that the Grand Army of the Republic would have committed to this, like, in any way, shape, or form?
I think Anakin goes.
You think Anakin goes?
I think Anakin and the entire 5-0. I think Anakin and the entire 501st goes.
This is like where I get confused in terms of, like, what the military structure is. I just can't imagine the Jedi Council allowing this.
Just taking off.
Yeah, the Jedi Council would never allow this, and then I wonder if that would cause a source of conflict.
In theory, then how did this happen in the first place? Obi-Wan and Anakin do agree. They do send part of Anakin's division off to do it.
Yeah. Well, they didn't ask the Jedi Order; they just did it. So and it's funny because by this point, a talk with Yoda and Mace, so obviously the council ends up knowing what ends up happening. I guess they are okay with it. It's just, I think that's very out of
upset.
Was it just
they were not
ask for forgiveness, not permission? We're gonna get bombed. See you guys.
A little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, I could see the council maybe being convinced to do something, just because, like, Maul is a high value target.
Yeah. At that point, there's the only real Sith, I guess, outside of Dooku, right?
Yeah. Well, at this point,
Dooku
is still alive.
But not about Maul, though.
Not right at this point. He's in the process of eventually dying.
But you're asking them to take sides.
They leave to go kill Dooku.
Yeah, but
right?
keep in mind, Obi-Wan does go and help Satine at other points, so it's not like it's not like they're, like, against having any contact with Mandalore.
Yeah, but this is, like, by definition, the Mandalorian civil war, and, like, obviously the Shadow government is run by Maul.
I think here's the bigger question. Let's say that Grievous wasn't attacking right then. What does Palpatine do in this case?
Well, I think the reason Grievous is attacking is because of Palpatine, so...
Well, no, I understand that, but the timing of that is specific. Let's just say, like, they were not quite ready for this. I don't think Palpatine decided, oh no, they were contacted about Mandalore. Grievous, attack now. Clearly that was a whole other plan. What I'm saying is, Palpatine, we know, would want to capture and also want to capture and deal with Maul. So you also could make an argument that Palpatine and the Senate would have approved of this, and the Jedi wouldn't really have had any say in it.
Sure, right.
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, you know, if this happened and, like, the whole Siege of Coruscant wasn't happening, then Palpatine would just find a way to, like, murk Maul. Like, either send Grievous or send Dooku or somebody to just basically...
I will admit, I haven't read Son of Dathomir. I am a little bit confused as to why Maul is alive.
Because at the end he's like, "You have a purpose still," and I'm like, I don't know what the purpose was.
Yeah, that was.
I think there's some backstory there from like some shit, but I don't know.
It is. I think I've seen some of the stuff about the Son of Dathomir comic, and I think that there's something in there, but it's still a little bit odd that Palpatine is just like, he let him be. Whatever.
He's fine over there. Don't worry about him.
Rule of two. What's rule of two? I've never heard.
No, I'm trying to remember. I think. Oh god, I cannot remember what Maul was supposed to do on Mandalore, but basically Son of Dathomir is him kind of like emancipating himself from Sidious's control with the help of Mother Talzin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then basically, like, spoilers, Mother Talzin dies. She's actually Maul's mother somehow. I don't know. I'm kind of glad that did not end up being in the show.
Yeah. I am curious, and Maul has, like, certainly redeemed himself from the extremely low start of being kind of a worthless throwaway in a single movie. But that whole thing, I'm a little bit confused by.
Well, not only that's what I'm talking about, like the brilliance, and I actually was going to mention this if we were to do like opening thoughts, that we usually do, but like I want to go back to a tweet that Sam Witwer said back on May 4th, like May the 4th be with you day, and he said, like, can you imagine if you told people in 2008 that the finale of Clone Wars was going to all be about Ahsoka, who was hated obviously in the 2008 movie, and for a short time when Clone Wars started, like, that's what I'm just an aside, and I resurrected Darth Maul and a random clone for 2 hours, and like this arc just talks about everything brilliant about the Clone Wars, how like Ahsoka turned into someone like that to one of the most popular characters in all of Star Wars, and Maul, who had no lines in the Phantom Menace and we thought died, became in a series.
He does have a line in the Phantom Menace.
I didn't realize he does. Yeah.
He does.
So yes,
he like talks to Sidious for like a hot second.
All right, so he has with one line in the Phantom Menace.
It might just be "Yes, my master."
Yeah, no, I do exactly. Yes, my master.
But that technically counts as a line.
Yeah. Since I didn't watch Clone Wars till like literally a month ago, I was very, very confused when I watched Rogue One. He showed up. Well, not Rogue One. Han Solo movie.
Solo. Yeah. There's actually a meme about that, which was really funny.
But like, who has no idea about all his other backstory. I was like, the fuck? Didn't he get chopped in half? I'm so confused.
Yes, he did in fact get chopped in half, but as Obi-Wan said, doesn't seem to stay dead.
But like this, and then like in the series that's already filled with some of the best villains ever. Maul has become one of the best villains in all of Star Wars too, and the clones, like when George Lucas thought of the idea of doing 2 throwaway armies of just clones and disposable droids on both sides, and like the Jedi can just tear through all of them. And then you like have a voice actor who can do subtle differences in all the clones and make all of them have unique personalities. And Rex becomes one of the most popular characters in all of Star Wars. Like, this is like the epitome of like what makes this show brilliant and like some of the best Star Wars content ever. Like, let alone just, it's insane.
Yeah. Also, fun fact: Bradley Baker, the voice of the clones, also the voice of Appa on Avatar: The Last Airbender.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
There
are quite a few connections here.
Yeah. He's just famous as a voice actor for like voicing animals in animation. Like any animal, like 50-50 chance it's him.
And I suppose if it's a character on Clone Wars, it's 50-50 chance it's him, just because of how many clones there are.
Yeah, there are episodes where he's just literally talking to himself.
Yeah, we're talking about that.
Yeah, during the Bad Batch, it's just
Bad Batch. There's like 3 credits in the entire episode, and one of them's him.
That's so funny.
Speaking of the clones, I gotta just having the line from Anakin of loyalty means everything to the clones, and just all of knowing where we're going here, like, man, you want to rip your heart out on that one. And just the moment of opening the doors and Ahsoka seeing the clones with the painted helmets, it's just unbelievable. And as Cory said, like, talking about like how we got here, that like a scene of the faceless, meaningless clones that were like, again, an afterthought line from the original trilogy that were turned into this like stand-in for stormtroopers, to have this incredible emotional reaction with a character who was never in one of the movies is just unbelievable. I loved it so much seeing that.
what made these episodes brilliant too, especially because I would guarantee you 99% of people watching this are Star Wars fans, as they know what happens in Revenge of the Sith, is there's always a sense of uncomfortableness and tension throughout all of the 4 episodes, because you know Order 66 and you know it's going to happen. But what really adds, like, a funny, when I watched this live and I saw that scene, like, my normal brain should have connected that these clones that are going to be wearing these helmets would be the ones that end up turning on Ahsoka, but I didn't think about that when that happened, and it was just like a warm, fuzzy, just like, wow, what a nice, heartwarming scene this was, and I didn't even connect
this is going to end very poorly.
Yeah.
Well, I think what's also a really great choice is right after this, because kind of, as you were saying, like, there is this, like, incredible sense of dread throughout these episodes, but really, up until this moment, that's not true. Because up until this moment, it kind of feels pretty normal. But the moment that alarm goes off and we hear Grievous has attacked Coruscant is kind of that immediate gut punch of like, oh, we're right here. Like, we are literally at the start of Revenge of the Sith. And that was, I think, the real moment for me of, because, again, like, obviously the start of this, you realize, okay, we are clearly coming to the end of the war. Like, they have Anakin and Obi-Wan's hairstyles set up so that they look very much like they do very much like they do in the final movie. But we don't know, like, exactly where we are in time, but this is that first moment of, oh, we are literally about to start the next movie. I mean, Obi-Wan says our fleet can be there within the hour, so we are an hour out from the start of Revenge of the Sith, and that, it was really the moment where I'm like, oh shit, this is something.
Well, it's funny because you never really know what the passage of time is in Revenge of the Sith. Like, honestly, like, it's confusing from where they've crash land on the Coruscant after they rescue Palpatine to, like, when, like, Mace when Grievous is killed. Like, you don't know if it's months, days, but apparently, like, Revenge of the Sith is, because, like, correct me if I'm wrong, did, like, Padme go from, like, she wasn't that pregnant in the beginning of the movie, right? Like, when they hugged for the first time?
She was pretty pregnant.
Yeah. She had, like, a little belly, like, baby bump, but I remember it, like, I didn't think she was that far along.
In my mind, because this is kind of a problem, she's doing a very good job of trying to hide it from her potential Senate colleagues.
But if she was, like, a few weeks away from giving labor, and, like, I think it's obviously, like, you think,
also, for the record, we do not know exactly how pregnancies work in the Star Wars universe, and do have to be sort of like, it doesn't necessarily need to be a 9-month pregnancy, because this is a different universe and things can work different biologically.
They speed it up, but
what I'm saying is we don't know. We've never seen another character pregnant in these stories, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it could work any number of ways. They could just be, like, super preemies, and apparently we have the technology to keep, like, I don't know, a 10-week-old fetus alive, but not the mother. Nope, she's gone.
I mean, there's literal cloning, so...
That's true. That is very true, and remember, she's also carrying twins, so theory should be even a little bit bigger. But we also know that it's been a very long time since Anakin and Padme have seen each other, so also it clearly has to be a pretty long while since the children were conceived.
Yeah, and you know what? That might also, because I'm thinking back to the final season before this. Like, there was that arc with Clovis where they kind of get into this, like, heated argument. It's like maybe they haven't seen each other since then.
They have zoomed. As we saw that in... did I just break you, Chris?
A little bit.
Yeah.
We know that...
Yeah, you could have had a pregnancy, just, chest up only.
Yeah. All right. Getting back on track. We have this conversation here that Cory and I had a bit of a discussion about this, I think, when it was airing, with sort of Ahsoka calling out Obi-Wan and for... leaving and going to help the Chancellor. And I really enjoy this right here. And I think a big part of it is that even though throughout much of this show, things are being set up as like Ahsoka is the morally superior one in many cases. But I really like that in this moment, it's a very legitimate argument between two people, and I don't think the story picks sides. I think that there is a very, like, Obi-Wan is making a reasonable case. The heart of the Republic is under attack. Anakin and Obi-Wan are needed to go back. They need to, save the Chancellor. That's really important. But Ahsoka's argument about, like, how people have lost faith in the Jedi is also a reasonable argument. And I don't think that there is a right or wrong answer here. And I think that that's an important part of setting this whole thing up, because in war, in these things, you're going to have complicated questions that aren't all right and all wrong.
I completely agree, and I in fact, with most of exactly what you're saying, and I actually like the argument too. That being said, like, it's one thing if, like, Coruscant, which is, again, the core of the Republic's being attacked, but, like, the Chancellor being kidnapped is, like, I just feel like Ahsoka should have also recognized the weight of what
For the record,
that
we don't
all
know
means.
that the Chancellor has been kidnapped yet.
Was that not communicated?
No.
All right.
Well, I mean, we did hear Shakti was sent to protect the Chancellor, but they've lost contact with her. But they do not.
But still, that's like a big, and, like, it's funny because guess who Ahsoka spent the entire last arc with? Two, like, girls that were from the core of Coruscant. So, like, like, it's not like it's a big deal to say that. Like, it's not just like a Dantooine or an Outer Rim world or something.
But
right, but that's also part of Ahsoka's point. Like, she even says to Obi-Wan, she's not trying to be fair. She's trying to, essentially just make a point about, them kind of losing sight of other things. They're so the Jedi are so wrapped up in the public and the bureaucracy of it. And I mean, if you ever, look at the Separatist argument about the Republic, that is a legitimate problem.
Yeah.
Right. But and I would agree with you if this was, like, a random battle, but the council's like, no, you guys have to do this random battle that is on a off-world for, like, resources, and I would agree with you. But Coruscant is, like, the most dense planet with, like, the core of the Republic. If the Separatists win that battle, the Separatists are going to probably win the war. So I'm just saying, like, I don't think it was too bad of a fight, but I think Ahsoka, out of all people, should have maybe been a little bit less harsh on Obi-Wan.
But what I'm saying is, as you just said, Austin, that's the point. She isn't being fair. She's not, like, she does understand that Coruscant and the Chancellor is important, but what she's arguing is that is it truly the Jedi way to be truly wrapped up in who wins and who loses this particular war? And that, I think, is part of the point. On top of that, the question becomes, are they, Anakin and Obi-Wan, specifically needed 100%? And as we saw, it turns out Ahsoka was right. Splitting the 501st in half did not affect their ability to win that battle and stop and save the Chancellor in any way. So, like I said, it's not, again, I don't think that there is a right or wrong here. I think that the both sides have merit, and that's really, I think, important. I think that that's something that we don't see very often in a show like this. Very often a show will pick a side very strongly, and I think they do a good job of not doing that.
Yep.
Yeah, to be fair, we're the ones picking sides right now in terms of who we agree with more.
What is the point of us being here if not to pick sides against Cory?
It's funny because the Empire obviously has your favorite. Republic's my second favorite.
Oh my god.
Oh, okay. I'm just gonna leave that one alone. All right. Anakin giving Ahsoka the lightsabers back. I love this scene. I've probably watched this scene like 35 times since this episode aired. I love this moment so much. Like, coming off of the spice running arc, and throughout a lot of that, I think that it's pretty, there were a few moments where you're like, God, why doesn't she just have her lightsaber? Why is this so much harder for her? Because, she's sort of just completely off on her own. And, like, getting them back, how much significant it is for a Jedi, specifically Ahsoka having her very like specific the second shorter lightsaber. That's really really cool for her. But on top of that, just how proud Anakin is both of Ahsoka and also of himself. The fact that he's been carrying around these lightsabers just like randomly, like they're not like, he's not like, oh, let me go home and get these. Like he's just has these with him in case he runs into her. That's so incredible. And that last line that he says when, after saying, they're as good as new, and then kind of smirks and says, maybe a little better. It's such a powerful point of Anakin's character. It's all of the arrogance and how full of himself Anakin is, along with being proud and caring deeply about his friends, and essentially for the last moment between these two people before eventually their confrontation in Rebels. It's just so sweet. It's so I can't even describe it. I love it so much.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much nailed it all on the head. Then, obviously, the lightsabers play in with the final scene ever in Clone Wars, which I think even adds more brilliance to the scene of Anakin being the one to hand them back to her, because in the end, I guess Anakin gets them back in a cruel, ironic way. So it just even enhances the final scene ever in Clone Wars even more. So.
And then we get a sort of another sort of pretty fun battle here of Ahsoka on her way down out of the cruisers into Mandalore.
Well, quickly, you passed on Rex getting promoted finally.
Yes, Rex did get. Well, it's not finally. You know why Rex wasn't promoted, right?
Why?
Because of Ahsoka. Because Ahsoka.
What do you mean?
Ahsoka was Anakin's commander. Obi-Wan did not have a Padawan, and therefore Cody was his commander.
Oh, okay. Well, good on you, Rex. You earned that.
You certainly deserved it. But yeah, the jetpack air Mandalorian battle, that was some cool shit, man. And the Ahsoka landing.
And I think you and I discussed this, Mark, offline. I'm not sure if it's you and me, or someone else, but the A and B plot, when you make it to Mandalore, were both equally as thrilling. Like the Civil War, 10 out of 10. You couldn't take your eyes off what you were watching, and then obviously Maul and Ahsoka. There was no weak points when you made it to Mandalore.
Yeah, and this to me is some of the best pure visual spectacle we've seen in Star Wars, and for a movie franchise that is sort of built on special effects and really big visual spectacle stuff, this is really one of the best battles we've seen in a really long time. And I think that's one of those moments where you're I'm watching this animated television show that's streaming on Disney Plus, and it looks this good.
And Ahsoka, the scene of Ahsoka jumping out, falling out of the sky with no parachute, doing all the things she did, doing the quote-unquote superhero landing.
Very Captain America
energy. The ship falling out of the sky after she lands. God damn it. It's clearly fan service, but so?
Yeah.
So what?
It's Star Wars.
Good kind of fan service.
Star Wars is fan service, and at least this is really good fan service.
Yeah.
And I will say, to Clone Wars, the credit for the entire series, it's generally had pretty good fight choreography for almost all of its run. Okay, sometimes things get a little goofy, but for the most part, even from season 1, I think the only reason I even gave it a chance is there's an episode with Ahsoka and Luminara and Dully where they fight Asajj Ventress, and that was the episode where I was like, okay, this is way better than that movie. I'll give it a chance.
Yeah, they did a good job, and even one of the early battles, the stuff on Geonosis, I thought was sort of that moment for me of wow, this is really great sort of battle tactics and building an animated battle. But just getting sort of taking the stuff that they had from the beginning and adding in this advanced animation style, I think just makes everything look really incredible. And then we head underground, and we realize heading into a trap, and then Maul emerges from the shadows. And Cory, you want to give your best rendition of Maul with his what he was hoping for?
I was expecting Kenobi. Pretty much what every man says now when, everyone expects Kenobi now.
We're all...
So, wait, hold on. So, Austin, I gotta reflect this back on you. Do you think Maul has feelings for Obi-Wan?
Yeah, well, it depends on what you mean by feelings. Does he
What do you mean by feelings?
Does he want to fuck Obi-Wan? Probably not.
Consensual?
No. Obi-Wan has enough potential partners and enough sexual chemistry on this show. He doesn't need it with Maul.
Or maybe he should, since he already has it with so many other people. What's one more at this point?
I mean, they're not sleeping together, but he should be sleeping with Ventress at this point.
I hear this Obi-Wan Ventress thing, and I don't understand it.
There is so much.
Do you remember when she saved him from Savage and Maul that first time? Like, I want that spin-off show of them just being like buddy cops in the galaxy.
His literal line there is, "You're not a sight I want to wake up to." Like, literally, they're just like fucking each other the entire time.
I love Obi-Wan so much. Oh my god! But I mean, again, Maul. Like, I love Maul so much. Maul is the highlight. Maul is like. So this to me, I think, is the best Star Wars. I'll get into it. But besides this, the best Star Wars comes from Rebels, when the two-parter with Maul and Vader and Ahsoka. But the reason is because of Maul, and like Maul has the best lines and the best delivery. His voice actor is phenomenal.
I don't entirely agree with that, because the Vader and Ahsoka stuff is also really, really good.
Yes. But the dynamic between Maul being like an anti-Yoda to Ezra, and this is like, if you don't know anything about the rest of the show, there's like, you're in the back of your head, you're like, is he gonna like convince Ezra, at least temporarily, to go to the dark side? It's such a interesting dynamic of him like really forcing Ezra to become his student, and like being like an anti-Yoda to him.
It's also, bringing that up, those episodes called Twilight of the Apprentice, and as we are now here, part 2 of this is The Phantom Apprentice. Something about episodes with apprentice in their name seem to do pretty well.
Yeah.
Because they have Maul in it.
Yeah, and also calling back to the Phantom Menace too.
Yes. And as you said, Maul's voice actor, Sam Witwer, absolutely knocked everything out of the park. He just gives an incredible performance, especially here in this episode, The Phantom Apprentice. Like, he is really capturing this, like, the idea that Maul at this point has like controlled himself. He is not like he fits everything that you wanted Maul to be when you watched The Phantom Menace, and there was this like incredibly cool looking villain, and there was so much awesome stuff going on, but like he literally has one line and turns out to be like a complete throwaway, and it's meaningless, and he delivers on everything that was needed to be there, and really like builds this vocal performance around really creating a character, and I think that's just it's really, really incredible.
Yeah. Well, his speech to the Mandalorians, like rallying them, being like, "You'll die as warriors, like on your feet." Like, that's my personal favorite part of that episode. Like, is that speech he gave, the rally behind them, and like, first off, I say this all the time, that armor is the coolest armor in all of Star Wars. The Maul Mandalorian variant of it, it's just, oh my god.
Which, interestingly, we do see on the heads of some of the Mandalorians in The Mandalorian, which does raise us some interesting questions about which one of them might have been allied with Maul.
Yeah. Also, going back a step for Sam Witwer and like apprentices, fun fact, he was the voice of oh my god, I can't remember the first name, but Starkiller in The Force Unleashed. So.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. Oh, that's cool.
On layers.
So another moment, sort of, I said before, we were talking about hearing the alarms go off and realizing that the Coruscant is under attack. We get Ahsoka gets out and we realize Ahsoka now has the conversation with Obi-Wan, and it's that moment, the second moment of like, oh my God, that's where we are. Clearly, now that Dooku is dead and like Obi-Wan is off to deal with Grievous on Utapau, and it's another moment of like, okay, we're moving real fast. We're getting very close to the end of this, and this is kind of like really, as you said, like there is that sense of dread throughout, and having these little kind of temporal reminders of like, oh, well, we've checked off that box. They've saved the Chancellor. Dooku's dead. Obi-Wan's off to deal with Grievous. Like, we've already gotten through maybe Cory's favorite thing in the history of the world. Have you heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
Yeah.
Well, it's my favorite scene in that movie, but
which then leads to, I think, like, to me, the fundamental question now of Star Wars, of what this whole thing has brought up, of what does the galaxy look like if Ahsoka is on Coruscant, a part of the Jedi Order during this entire thing.
We always talk about this, and I see your point in a lot of ways, but like if everything kept going as is, and Anakin was getting these visions, I think Ahsoka would have like not maybe gone to the dark side, but I think she would have turned a lot on, especially when they asked Anakin to spy on the Chancellor. She would have like flipped the shit.
Well, but that's the thing right here, where Ahsoka, like, Obi-Wan tells Ahsoka about this mission, and Ahsoka's immediate reaction is like, that's not a good idea. Anakin is not going to take kindly to that. And the fact that she knows him as well as she does, being being his apprentice, it just, fundamentally the council really fails. And I understand why they put this assignment on Anakin. Like, Anakin is the only one who would be able to report on the Chancellor's dealings of the Jedi Order. But fundamentally, like, this was such a huge tactical mistake on their part. Of like, even Mace says it, and we'll get to you, Mace, and give you some harsh words later. But like, the line of it's very dangerous putting them together. And it's like, well, why did you do it? Like, they didn't have to spy on the Chancellor, and they did not have to have Anakin be the one to spy on the Chancellor. And I just think that part of the whole point here is that Ahsoka, does she fundamentally, and what does she change? I do wonder if either she ends up being kind of a little bit of a voice of reason to show maybe this is not the right idea, or be one to be able to explain to Anakin, I have my problems with the council. I understand why you need to do this. However, that doesn't mean they're doing it because they're evil. They're doing this because they have to.
I think it's hard to say, because it could really go either way. Because, I mean, if Ahsoka's still with the Jedi at this point and with Anakin, then it also means that she may not have lost her faith in them like she did. So
that's true.
Her view and her character would, fundamentally be changed pretty drastically.
I mean, that's certainly true. My point, though, is that by the point of Anakin making this choice, especially with Obi-Wan off on Utapau, and even just in general, Obi-Wan being who he is, Anakin has really no one to talk to. He has no one to sort of sort out feelings. And I think Ahsoka, being a person who would really provide for him the ability to sort out what he thinks and what he feels.
Well, I think the fundamental thing that would have happened was, I think the movie would have played out normally, and then Mace would have went to go arrest the Chancellor, and then Anakin would have followed, and I think Ahsoka would have went too. And then that's where, like, the big what-ifs are going to happen. Like, if Ahsoka was in the room with Anakin when Mace was about to kill the Chancellor. Because I think Ahsoka would have also, who has very similar morals to Anakin, would have been against him dying too. So I wonder if, maybe not kill Mace, but, like, somehow both of them together would have stopped Mace from going to complete the kill. There's, like, so many what-ifs there. Because
I think if Ahsoka's in the room, things just do not turn out the way. I do not think Anakin turns as Ahsoka's in the room. I just don't.
But he wouldn't also let Palpatine die.
I think that I think in that moment. Now, I've also caveat, and granted, I feel like you should be the one saying this, not me. There is also the reasonable chance that Palpatine just overpowers all of them because he's Palpatine, and
No, I think Mace had him beat. I think.
That's the question.
Think...
Did Mace have him beat, or did Palpatine sandbag, hoping that Anakin would that this would
believe it or not, like I can't call these canon, but like I've seen like a lot of these like things that like were considered canon at the time before Disney, blah blah. And I think and there's the book, there's the Revenge of the Sith book, which was really good. I think he had him beat.
Yeah. That's fair. Look, there is no answer, and I don't think that we're supposed to have an answer. I just think that getting these little moments like this, these little conversations, is just a reminder of how Ahsoka really is missing Ahsoka's presence, and just how much Ahsoka not being in Revenge of the Sith and not being within these actions, I think really has a pretty fundamental effect on Anakin as a person and what these events happen.
Yeah. I mean, the real answer is Dave Filoni should just make Clone Wars Revenge of the Sith.
That's what I want. That's what I'm lobbying for.
I mean, yes, but if he's not allowed to fully retcon things, I'm not sure what it looks like.
No, but he could drop a couple scenes in of like Anakin being like, "I wonder what Ahsoka's up to," or something at least. Because randomly. Right, because I mean, functionally speaking, obviously, Revenge of the Sith can't mention Ahsoka because she wasn't created until after the movie was made.
That is, I mean, if you want to talk about the big what ifs, that is the truly biggest what if. What does Star Wars look like if Clone Wars happened before Revenge of the Sith?
Well, then there's the thing. Ahsoka would have been in Revenge of the Sith, and a lot of things would have changed. I think if George Lucas knew he wanted Revenge of the Sith to end the way it did, you probably would hate Ahsoka because Ahsoka's presence. First off, I think Ahsoka would have died in Order 66 under that timeline, especially with George writing it. So I just want to flag that for you. I think Ahsoka would have died in Order 66.
I fully understand that that's probably true. I would also be remiss if we don't. A lot of Littlefinger energy out of Maul in these episodes. He really is into this. We're gonna thrive in the chaos and seize what power we can. Very. I
want to claim that Maul, just like I guess laying off that, Maul's really turned into like a Vegeta. He's more of like an anti-hero, and he's the correct one. Us, the viewers.
Corey, can you stop making Dragon Ball Z references when you've never seen the show and don't know anything about the characters?
I don't know how to say it. Like a villain that is also the good guy and is actually correct. Like what else? How else do I say it?
So Kaiba.
Kaiba, sure. He's the Kaiba of the series
I don't know.
right now.
He's still objectively a villain.
But he's right. He's correct. Ahsoka is the one that's clouded with emotion.
We're not there yet. Let's hold up until we get to that. In general, one little thing I want to mention, because we mentioned it with Kanan. We do get a quick, a brief scene or brief showing of the villain from Solo. What is his name? Dryden Voss. He is one of the syndicate leaders. So we at least know that Dryden Voss was part of this Shadow Collective Crimson Dawn thing that will, again, supposedly become a part of Solo. Also, getting to see Jesse as the one who is captured. Another one of this nice touch of seeing that, realizing, rewatching it at the end with Jesse as the eventual commander who will be leading the clones against Ahsoka was that adds a nice bit of he's standing up to Maul so defiant, and it requires Maul totally breaking into his mind with the Force, and very quick very soon after this he's going to be the one leading the charge trying to kill Ahsoka.
And that's obviously from the sequels. That's what I think Kylo Ren kind of introduced, but I love the idea of dark side interrogation. I just think mind break, literally entering the mind to pull the information out. Such a cool Sith. It's like so much cooler than like what they did in the original trilogy, where they just had like the robot with the needle at the end of it do it. Like I think it's so much better like having the Force be the way you interrogate someone. It just makes sense.
Well, especially since you have the Jedi mind trick. It kind of is a natural, exploration.
And it's such a Sith. It's such a
Is he
Sith
actually
thing.
directly pulling the information out, or is he just causing pain?
No,
I think he's pulling the information out, like literally entering
He's actually
his
like
mind
going
again.
through his thoughts. Okay.
Because remember, you saw that we talked about the Obi-Wan going undercover thing, where Anakin goes in and tries to break the mind of the guy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't remember.
I mean, you see it in a bunch of different ways. I mean, you see it in like The Force Awakens. You see it. Oh my God, I forget why they're trying to interrogate one of the Genoshans, like Poggle. They try and get into his mind, but they can't do mind tricks on Geonosian, so Anakin just beats him up.
Well, Anakin never the best guy.
Yeah. Also in that scene plays the Vader theme.
They do that a lot.
They did that, and actually in this one, the moment before the Prime Minister Olmec dies, as he's saying Skywalker, you just get a little riff of the Imperial March, which was nice, a little nice touch there.
Yeah. I will say for Olmec, like in the first episode, he put up a decent fight against Bo-Katan. I didn't think he had that in him.
I mean, he's still a Mandalorian, I suppose.
Yeah, but he still seemed like a punk ass bitch.
Oh, for sure. And Grant, you do have to also say Bo-Katan in this episode, just pretty incredible performance by her.
Oh yeah.
She was she really looked like, what a Mandalorian should be.
And now we know she's still alive by the time Mandalore show is.
We don't know anything.
Yeah,
she was
it could be a
casted, so...
That does not mean anything. It could.
Yeah.
We're probably
flashback.
we're gonna get a flashback to the Purge, I'm sure. So it's very possible that it's that.
No.
I would like for her to be alive, but it's fine if she's not.
Yes. Well, that is at least some time after all of this. All right. We're beginning to talk about we're gonna call this the throne room scene. This the second time we've had a pretty major throne room scene in Star Wars. So, as anyone who has listened to what I said about The Last Jedi, I do not hate The Last Jedi. I have very serious problems with the movie, and I think that I have very serious problems with Rian Johnson as a director in general. With that said, I do think that there's a lot of really interesting stuff within The Last Jedi. And as many people have said that they really like the throne room scene there, for as much as that's true, I think that this is just a straight up better version of that. We're in a throne room. We have a not quite Sith dark side user reaching their hand out to a not quite Jedi and having essentially an ethical debate about what the right thing to do here is. And I think this works significantly better than the one in The Last Jedi, entirely because of the outcome. In The Last Jedi, I've said this many times, I'm not going to go through this completely again, but I think that the natural extension of where the movie is going is Rey should have joined forces with Kylo Ren. That's what the movie is setting up. And not turn to the dark side, but attempted to forge a new path between the two of them that rejects the false dichotomy of Jedi and Sith. However, the movie doesn't do that and ends up going back into very boilerplate, good versus evil Star Wars stuff. And essentially the movie says Rey was right not to join Kylo Ren because it turns out he was all evil until Rise of Skywalker, where I guess he's not. In this one, I think things are significantly better because, for one thing, Maul is right. Maul is not lying to Ahsoka. Anakin, as we know, will be the apprentice, and destroying him is would actually be an important thing. And stopping Sidious requires a particular path that is outside of Jedi and Sith. And as we said about what ifs, the what if Ahsoka joins up with Maul, I don't think things change all that much, but maybe there's a possibility they can thwart Sidious. They are two very powerful Force users with pretty intimate knowledge of the situation. But the reason that Ahsoka doesn't choose to go with Maul, even though initially she does say that she'll help him, is because she cannot believe that Anakin could ever turn to the dark side. And this is another one of those things about like sort of saving Anakin's character, even with him not being in the room, even not being in the scene, in that we hear from Obi-Wan in the original trilogy about how great a person Anakin was. Throughout the prequels, we're supposed to believe of Anakin as a good man who fell. And unfortunately, that just doesn't come out all that often. And sometimes some of it is just because it is a prequel and we always know we're heading towards Vader. And like in Attack of the Clones, Anakin just sort of casually commits a genocide that no one seems to care about. And like that's not like, oh no,
I mean,
you did a bad thing.
Do the Jedi know that he commits a genocide? It's just Padme.
No, it's Padme and Palpatine. Anakin.
Yeah, but
Anakin tells, the supreme leader of the Republic that he, whoopsies, I committed a genocide.
Well, I mean, it's just one village of Tusken Raiders. It's not the whole race.
Okay, maybe genocide is not the correct word, but mass murder at least.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, but he wants him to commit mass murder, so what does he care?
Well, obviously, yes, but Anakin does not know that Palpatine is like that. My point being that scene of Anakin, destroying the Tusken Raiders, on one hand is like, okay, we see that Anakin has this dark side in him, and he has feelings within him. However, on the other hand, it's also way over the top and ridiculous and destroys any ability for you to look at Anakin and say, oh no, he's actually like a good person deep down. Like, no, good people don't, whoopsies, I slaughtered a village, and not just the men, but the women and the children too.
I don't know. They did kind of kidnap and torture his mom to death. I could imagine him killing the village in a fit of passion.
I can imagine it. I'm just saying that it's not a particularly good way to endear yourself to somebody, to a character.
Well, true. It's not. But I mean, that's not meant to make him a good person. It's meant to signal to the audience that, this guy gives into his passions and loses
keep in
his
mind
cool.
that essentially this is the thing that causes him and Padme to like fall in love. Him telling Padme this.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Technically, isn't Padme a little bit of a child predator? Because what's their age difference again?
It's like 5 years.
It's 5 years. Right? It's only 5 years.
Only 5 years. So he's 18 and she is 23. So high school graduate dating a college graduate.
That's, probably not good. And
yeah,
she's more than just a college graduate. She is a sitting senator.
Yeah. Also, they knew each other when he was, 8? And she was, oh, God,
It's 9 and 14.
14.
9
and 14.
Oh, that's so much better, isn't it?
Oh, yes. That is true. Getting back on what I'm saying, though, the fact that Ahsoka, a person who knows Anakin as well as she does, can be consumed by his compassion and his... And the love that she has for him, and not the romantic love, but just, love between two people, I think does a great job of selling me on just the fact that the fall of Anakin Skywalker is in fact a fall. He wasn't just an awful human being the whole time. He was a good person who tried to do what was right and fell. And having that be the crux of essentially one of the reasons that Ahsoka and Maul are not capable of stopping Anakin, for me is really heartbreaking and really fundamentally sells me on this idea of, if Star Wars is the story of the rise, fall, and essentially rise again of Anakin Skywalker, this I think is just really important storytelling that we've never gotten before.
And it's just again, you're right, this throne room scene is just miles above the Last Jedi one, but it's because A, Maul is correct. B, Ahsoka says yes, and actually takes his hand,
well,
like
never actually
figuratively.
his hand, but yes.
I mean, I just said figuratively.
I didn't hear the
and like then in a cruel irony, when Maul tells her what she doesn't want to hear, even though we know as the audience Maul is correct, like Ahsoka changing her mind because of her love for Anakin is brilliant. And then there's there's the whole scene where like the war is happening outside the window, and then the glass shatters, and everything pauses, and the glass is coming in.
That glass shattering is just, that may be my current favorite shot in animated television.
And then watching again, you said about the faces earlier, but Maul's face of anger and disappointment when Ahsoka takes back like her yes was brilliant. And then immediately, like when I noticed something with the animation when he goes to ignite the lightsaber, and like I noticed something was different in a positive way about the animation, because now we know now there was motion capture, but it's like I can't stress to you how many layers of brilliance that was. It's just like, oh.
You're also skipping over his incredible line there. I see the Padawan needs one last lesson.
Yeah, great. I don't know what else to say.
I'm not memeing in any way. Is this the best lightsaber duel of all time?
But yeah, I think the answer is yes.
That's a tough one for me. I'd really have to think about it.
Because the Phantom Menace doesn't have the emotion and complexity this one does in terms of storytelling. Then nothing in Attack of the Clones. I do like Revenge of the Sith, but I will say something about excess. The one between Obi-Wan and Anakin and Revenge of the Sith did not have to be as like long and complex and anime-like. Then obviously nothing in 4. 5 had good ones, but good ones for storytelling, but this had both substance, flash, and storytelling. So yeah, the answer is yes.
I don't know. I didn't spend 8 hours in this one.
Yeah.
The last one in Fallen Order, I spent 9 hours to beat.
The final boss in Fallen Order? That was pretty easy compared to the one before that with the old man.
I don't know. That one I beat pretty quickly. It's just the one right before.
You couldn't use force power, but you couldn't use force powers in that one. That made it harder.
I don't know. It just
I don't use the force. That
one took a lot longer than the other for that. I pretty much broke a couple controllers, possibly.
But yeah, no, I really have to think about it. I mean, I guess going back a step, I actually like The Last Jedi. I think there are flaws in it, but we don't have to rehash it. But in terms of whether this
I don't hate The Last Jedi. I just don't like certain parts of The Last Jedi.
That's fair. I don't know. I think we don't. Again, okay, no, I don't have to go down this hole. But in terms of this being the best lightsaber battle, I'm like really trying to think, because Clone Wars has a bunch of good ones, and and thinking of the resources that they have here, obviously they went all out. That kind of tempers my judgment of it a little bit, because if all the lightsaber battles had that amount of resources, what would they look like?
I just think to me is that like just the actual fight was the coolest because of this, like the styles of the two lightsabers versus the double bladed one with the motion capture and everything. It's just like the fastest fucking lightsaber fight I've seen.
I think another big part of it is there was a lot of talk during the prequels that the addition of spectacle and extreme choreography hurt the fights because they made them look a little too staged. And I think this is
I wholly disagree with that.
I'm not saying I agree with that. I actually think that at times is a little bit overblown. That being said, I do think that in this particular case, the fact that it is in animation helps a little bit with the suspension of disbelief. I think animation is allowed to get away with things looking a little bit flashier. Now, again, I don't actually agree with that criticism. I think that as much as Anakin versus Obi-Wan is a little bit over the top and at times a little bit too much, I still think it looks cool, and sometimes it's fine for an action scene to just, look cool. But in general, I think the fact that this is an animation, but then was done live via mocap, I think it's just a really great combination of all of the styles put together, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Because I guess in my mind right now, in terms of lightsaber, I'm still thinking about like Savage versus Asajj and Dooku. Like that I would say is about on par in terms of like storytelling, action, and choreography, and in terms of like I remember watching that when it first aired. That was a moment when we were like, oh shit, like what's happening here? Like this is something like completely unheard of. You have like three bad guys in a three-way free for all. They each have different style, like completely different styles of fighting, etc. But like I guess going back to the like to action choreography itself, like people always say they want things to be like quote unquote realistic, but no fight in any movie is ever realistic. There's no, like, in reality you don't use a reverse-handed grip for a long-bladed weapon. You're not gonna like be able to jump around the way they do, and yeah, no, I just
well,
totally...
also there's context there, because being a Jedi and a Force user, forget about Jedi, being a Force user means that you have the ability to like have instincts to like see your opponent's move ahead. So if anything, the choreography of fights between Jedi and Sith in the prequels make more sense with their powers, because like I think Rogue One is when you see Darth Vader outside of animated stuff at like his like quote unquote full power, and like you had limitations in the OT. So I give more into the fact that yes, if you are a Force user, you will have fights more similar to the Phantom Menace, more so than you would like in Episode 4.
Yeah. Well, but that's exactly what I mean, though, right? It's not whether or not it's realistic; it's whether or not you can suspend your disbelief.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I think that at times the animation maybe helps a little bit with that suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, that's true, to a certain degree, but I don't know, because I think of, if you watch like martial arts flicks and stuff, like what Jedi do is no different than a martial arts master in any movie. Like think of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon; they literally fly. So,
side note, I will never forgive them for underutilizing Donnie Yen. Never forgive him. Because if he,
that's like actually interesting.
If they choreographed an actual fight sequence of him, it would have been the best fight sequence in all of Star Wars ever. But they didn't.
Trust me when I say I don't want to take this off into a tangent, because we're we have a lot more to cover. But I do actually am curious. There's the people that have hatred about what happened to Yoda in the prequels, about how Yoda in Attack of the Clones, like his fight with Dooku, like contradicted everything about his character in the original trilogy. But like, what do you think like an old master, like comparing it to like a samurai movie, would be more like a Yoda using the Force to like hide his like physical limitations and that? Like, is that like too bad of an insult, or do you agree that Yoda fighting the way he fights contradicts him in like 5 and 6?
The fundamental problem there is that in the original trilogy, we don't know what the Jedi were like back in the day. All we see is Obi-Wan, Yoda, and I guess Vader in theory. And as a result, we see Yoda at a very sort of at the end of his life, and in this position where things are very like he is essentially a hermit. And I think that like in so many ways this is another example of like the Jedi were not created to be what they are in the original trilogy, or what they are in the prequels during the original trilogy. Like the idea of Yoda being this guy who wielded a lightsaber, I agree with on some level, is very different than the Yoda we see in the original trilogy. That being said, fundamentally, we're talking about a pretty long time ago and a fundamentally different world. And I don't have a huge problem with the idea of Yoda using a lightsaber. I think it is somewhat in that vein of like, if they had made the choice not to do it, if Yoda was not, they had sort of kind of kept Yoda to what he was in the original trilogy, I wouldn't have been mad about it. I didn't need to see Yoda in a lightsaber. I don't think it's that big a deal, though.
I think I just watched too much anime, and I think about like, I guess more of what George Lucas was thinking, and about fans that are positive on that think is like, you get to see Yoda at his full quote-unquote power level, like what you imagine a true Jedi Master who's like thousands of years old is capable of doing.
It's also the fundamental question of what is the point of the Jedi. Because the problem is the Jedi are set up as this sort of, on some level to connect, connected to Avatar in some ways, like in that Tibetan monk style of like they are this order, they're celibate, they're supposed to be keepers of the peace, and they have this extreme this religion that is built on not having attachment to things and all that stuff, and yet they're also essentially superheroes who have swords and run around and kill people, and those two things kind of don't really work together. And it's okay if you don't think about it too hard, but when the prequels tries to bring in a lot more of the sort of lore and essentially the religion of the Jedi, it does become a little bit weird and what are fundamentally are the Jedi samurai or are the Jedi monks? Because those are not the same thing.
I mean, the answer is white people don't know how Asians do, so they just mixed everything up. Well, because, there are orders of, Shaolin monks who practice martial arts as a form of, spiritual discipline, and the samurai in Japan were essentially just kind of, agents of their feudal lord, if I'm remembering correctly. So, the answer is, in real life, George Lucas decided to mash a bunch of those ideas up. But it actually kind of reminds me of the fundamental tension in the final season of Avatar: The Last Airbender, specifically when Aang talks to Avatar Yang Chen. She talks about how a lot of airbenders, have found spiritual enlightenment by removing themselves from the world and, forming and becoming detached from it. But then the Avatar can't do that because their duty is to the world. So in a weird way, the Jedi are kind of an embodiment of that tension. They believe somehow that they can find enlightenment through emotional detachment, yet they involve themselves so much in the affairs of the world. But Yang Chen's right, you can't do that because if you have to care about the world, you have to be connected to it.
That is true, and yeah, I just think that what the reason that at times, I think you said it, the reason that sometimes this stuff doesn't make sense is because it just doesn't make sense, because it was pulling in different spiritual and archetypes that are essentially just throwing a bunch of Asian cultures together, and at times it doesn't make sense. And
well, also not even that English, they're called Jedi Knights, sabers, lightsabers. I think there's a lot of English inspiration there too.
Why English?
Knights having a saber.
That's not necessarily English. That's medieval.
All right. Medieval, which then when generally you think of, again, this is George Lucas, he's thinking about the zeitgeist the way I'm thinking about it. Medieval England, Europe.
King Arthur. Anakin is King Arthur, is what you're saying.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just going to put forward the idea that light katana sounds a little weird. It's a little too nerdy.
A light katana? Yeah, that'd be a little weird.
No, but I think it's fantasy, like Lord of the Rings-esque fantasy universe. You have wizards, but instead of wizards, they're called Jedi. Look at what the original trilogy was.
Yeah, I understand it is clear fantasy. I'm just the point here is that if you try to apply too much logic to the philosophy of the Jedi, you're gonna realize it feels like a bunch of things mashed together. Because in the end, it's a bunch of things mashed together.
It is.
That don't necessarily fit with one another. Coming to the end of this episode, Ahsoka follows Maul out. They end up on that lattice on the top of before as Maul is trying to escape. And another just the visual spectacle up there is incredible. But also, Ahsoka loses her lightsabers and beats Maul.
I'm just gonna say, when you said that the shattering glass was your favorite shot, I think her igniting the lightsabers on top of that thing is my favorite shot, of anything.
That's
dope.
Also really, really great too.
There's no wrong answers. When you tell me your favorite thing is
playing, point that one out because
yeah, I'm just saying there's always a correct answer. That's all me. That's on me.
Okay, part 3, Shattered, and right at the start, I want to just really commend how great the soundscape is throughout. I mean, all of this, but especially in this episode, because to me, this is a really great lesson in how to do a prequel, because there's always going to be a big tension within a prequel with, at the end of the day, the audience knows what is going to happen at the end. Throughout the entirety of the prequels, we know Anakin will become Darth Vader. So fundamentally, the story cannot deviate from that, and therefore everything has to be in service of this thing that we know is coming. And at times, I think they do it well. At times, I think that they might fail with it. But here, for this to be a prequel of Order 66, we know that Order 66 is coming. We know where we are in time. The fact is, they don't play around with it at all. This episode fundamentally is built on the idea that you as a viewer know Order 66 is coming, and has this just feeling of dread built into everything, from the shot construction to the soundscape to everything, that, you know, again, if you're not paying attention to the fact that Order 66 is coming, it almost doesn't make sense. You're like, why are things not like kind of like happy and grateful that they've captured Maul and taken over?
There's people out there who didn't know Order 66 was going to happen and they just got like completely blindsided by this.
I would be genuinely curious to see someone watch this
before the movies or
in
before
chronological order,
having
not ever seen anything.
No, but even if you're just a Clone Wars fan, you see no Star Wars but Clone Wars. You know about like the Fives arc with the chip in the brain, and you know about even this Maul right now, the last few episodes.
Yeah,
you're all doomed. Like,
we don't,
so like,
but like you don't have that hard knowledge that, oh, everyone's gonna die like now.
Yeah, I have to be honest, because the average person doesn't really follow Clone Wars, right? It's only Star Wars fans, I think, who are really like into the series and who really like tuned into this. Like, maybe that one person out there who's only ever watched Clone Wars and has remained like completely ignorant to everything else Star Wars. But
it just seems legitimately impossible. Like, is there
right?
Really anyone out there who's like, oh, this Anakin Skywalker guy, nice dude.
Right?
What happened to him in the end?
Yeah, which person's watching Clone Wars and doesn't know about like the greater Star Wars canon?
If there's anyone out there who you're like that, please let us know, because I'd love to interview you. All right, Cory, all you asked for, you said it to me like 17 times before this stuff out, is you wanted to see scenes from Revenge of the Sith. There is a scene that is a straight recreation of Revenge of the Sith. How do you feel about this?
Recreation of Revenge of the Sith.
The first you see the meeting and you have Mace.
Oh yeah, so they hold the holographic meeting, and he says, "I sense a plot to destroy the Jedi," and then all that, and then Ahsoka walks in, and that's I wanted more of that, because like again, like I think you all. And I think everyone in this room hates Hayden Christensen more than he deserves. I think Hayden Christensen did fine. I think he had some.
For the record, I do not blame Hayden Christensen in any way.
I think it was fine.
There are incredible actors in those movies, and they're all terrible because the lines they're given are terrible.
They're trying.
My point is
Hayden Christensen's fault.
I would love.
I think Hayden Christensen's a wooden actor, but I don't think it's his fault the movie's as bad as it is. Like, it's really, a lot of it's the direction.
I wanted a scene, and it didn't happen, and I'm fine with it because what we got is still brilliant. But I wanted them to recreate the Anakin Obi-Wan fight with these actors, and like what the dynamic between
What the bull fight?
Maybe not, but
Like
they kind of did it because Ahsoka was on the bridge, and she like kind of had flashes of like the lines in Revenge of the Sith, but told again through the voice actors.
No, that's Hayden Christensen.
Was it?
Yes, it's Hayden Christensen.
It was both.
Interesting.
It's merging it together, but any line, the actual line of "What have I done?" is Hayden Christensen's voice.
Oh, yeah. But that being said, there's so much connective tissue. Mark, you said it yourself. Clone Wars existing does not retcon anything in the prequels at all, and like that's what makes Clone Wars so brilliant. It feels like what's happening right now is happening literally parallel to Revenge of the Sith, and nothing feels out of place.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, what are we counting as retconning? Because like they do change how Adi Gallia dies instead, because she got killed by Grievous in the comics, which I can't remember what level of canon they were, but instead she gets impaled by Savage.
Well, I mean like movies to Clone Wars, not like the other expanded universe.
Fair enough.
I believe that was decanonized. All right, it's time. We need to take someone to task. Mace Windu, you deserved everything you got. You are an awful Jedi. You were a terrible leader, and I hate you so much.
So, quickly, let me just preface this, and then you all can go and tear into Mace if you guys choose to. But the reason, and this is canon, the reason why Mace Windu has a purple lightsaber is because he uses dark side tendencies in his combat style, which is a forbidden Jedi art, which the Jedi allow him to do, because he's one of the rare Jedi that is able to take dark side energy and use it for strength, but not fall to the dark side. So I think that also in canon explains why he's more harsh and rigid, is because he's like always channeling dark side energy also. And just keep that in mind as you guys like think about Mace, because Mace is one of the more harsh, unlikable Jedi. And I kind of really love that canon explanation for him, because like in real life he has a purple lightsaber because Samuel L. Jackson wanted a purple lightsaber, and
you want to be able to pick himself out into big battle scenes.
But they canonize the fact that purple now means that you're using dark side energy, and he's the only one. And that's why it also explains why Mace was able to defeat Palpatine, and why he's like one of the few Jedi that probably could. So just that, throwing it out in the ether, you guys can pick up on it however.
I'm not saying that this is a problem. I am just saying, Mace Windu, you are awful, and I hate you. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, I don't hate Mace. Like I can see where he's coming from, because like a lot of the Jedi Masters, like, you know, believe in like kind of like Jedi orthodoxy. They're rigid, and you know, they want things to be a certain way. They believe things must be a certain way, and you know, that also kind of ties into the fact of like, you know, again, the Republic being so bureaucratic to the point of being like ineffective. Like he's kind of like the embodiment of that, but I can understand why, because there are people even in real life, they look to institutions of power, they look at the rules and are like, okay, these are the rules, these are what we have to follow, this is what we're supposed to do. There is no deviancy from this because we have the master plan here.
I do understand that. It's not exactly what he does, it's just the way he says citizen to Ahsoka. Like,
I mean,
it's just a level of disrespect there. That's just
but here's the thing, though. Yes,
you could argue that Ahsoka.
No, he's right. Mace is right in that scene, at least.
Okay, I don't want to agree with Cory, so shut up for a second. I could understand why Mace did that. He's being a petty bitch, because Yoda, I think, was like, you know, oh, as a citizen, not as a Jedi, because like that invitation to, you know, join the Order is like still open to her. Yoda's trying to like, you know, be graceful and extend that hand out to her, and she's slapping it away.
Well, remember though what she said. She didn't say no. She said not yet.
Yeah, and yeah, no, exactly. That's why I'm saying Mace is being a little bitch about it.
Then that's my point. This is why I'm calling Mace out. You're in a war.
He's not. He's in a military conversation, and she's a citizen. Like, what do you expect the poor guy to do?
She's even in that.
Be nicer about it. There's a nice way to say that, Cory.
They're in-house, and she's a contract worker, okay? So
Look,
she shouldn't
again,
be on the in-house
I'm not saying
conversation.
he had to answer. I'm saying he didn't have to say it the way he said it. That's what I'm saying. Don't be disrespectful to Ahsoka. And we very rarely have the, like, does Ahsoka face sexism conversation, but, like, this is a one moment where, like, a little bit.
That part I'm not
No,
sure.
Mace would have said it to anyone, and you see how he treats Anakin?
Take a seat, young Skywalker.
He's an asshole to everyone equally.
That's fair. So
And you can't have sexism in a universe with no women, Mark.
Or black people. Wait. Uh-oh.
If that's not like the fundamental like statement of Star Wars at this moment, I don't know what is, Cory. One last little Rebels cameo. We do see Sabine Wren's mother leading Maul out in the Mandalorian Jedi capture machine.
It's like the Hannibal Lecter. I think that's what they were going for.
That was some creepy stuff, but that worked really well. And I do love Bo-Katan's line where it's like, when we Mandalorians had reason to imprison you force-wielding maniacs. And it's like, yeah.
Can
Mm-hmm. What do you want to say?
All right, Mark. Can we just I know we've been beating around the bush because we dread it as much as the fans dread it, but can we finally get to what we're here for? What we're here for? Like, that's why I'm here.
What are you here for?
We're on the bridge. She has her little bit.
But right before that, though, when she and Rex have a conversation, that's important.
Yeah, we do need to talk about that. That is really important. Yeah, because I mentioned this line before, but Ahsoka has we were trained to be keepers of this peace, not soldiers, but all I've been since a Padawan is a soldier. And then Rex having his response of like the clones don't really know how to feel what to feel about the war, because on one hand all their brothers are dying, on the other hand they would not exist legitimately without the war. So there's some real stuff going on there. Like, you want to talk about the philosophy of the Jedi, and like if we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but like talking about the ideas of the Last Jedi and the like failures of the Jedi Order, and kind of the argument that Luke makes is kind of, this is sort of the same, really just another outgrowth of that Ahsoka recognizing that like the teachings of the Jedi do not match at all with the actions of the Jedi.
Yeah, and I mean, what are the ethics here of like child soldiers? Because all the Padawans, are still like relatively young and being sent off into war.
And basically given no choice, because they were essentially taken as like babies and then raised in this temple and told, this is what you have to do.
Well, I think we can put that on the parents. I'm pretty sure the parents have a choice as to whether or not to give their kids up to the Jedi.
Yes, but in some cases, they're orphans and don't have parents.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, in that case, I would hope that they give the orphan an option to say no. But I mean, what orphan's going to say no to a place that like is going to house and feed them and teach them how to move things with their mind?
But as we know, you can't really make a decision that should affect the rest of your life when you're a very young child. And then you've been raised, and then you're not. Do you even have free will?
I don't know. Well, maybe the social, maybe like the social services system on Coruscant is overwhelmed, and the Jedi provide a service.
That's an interesting idea. Anyone have orphans? We need more Jedi. Anyone have any orphans? And then Ahsoka's last line. The Republic could not have asked for better soldiers, nor I a better friend. That's essentially the last thing that she says to Rex before Order 66, and wow.
Yeah. No, the great thing about Clone Wars is, from episode 1, not including the movie, I pretend that doesn't exist, but like the first episode of Clone Wars, like the official TV show, is Yoda with the clones, and the series is introducing us to the idea that these clones are people, they're individuals with their own personalities, and they're worthy of that respect, of recognition of their humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then, speaking of humanity in a clone, Rex actually fighting off Order 66, even for a brief moment. Rex is the best.
Well,
I love Rex.
Well, probably saved Ahsoka's life.
Oh, clearly I think he saved Ahsoka's life. Yeah. I am willing to give him the credit that his hesitation saved Ahsoka's life, and I'm willing to accept his "I never betrayed my Jedi" line in Rebels, which, maybe not 100% true, but I'm willing to accept it.
Yeah. He never successfully betrayed his Jedi.
Yes.
Yeah,
he never betrayed his Jedi because his Jedi is technically Anakin. He never betrayed Anakin.
Yeah.
So he's not Jedi.
No Jedi.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also I like to think that maybe Fives, like, that whole ordeal maybe just gave him that extra kind of mental boost to help him fight off the initial order.
I mean, we were discussing this before. I am 100% sure that he is Force sensitive, and that's part of it.
Be interesting. Now, technically speaking, if we go by straight like canon rules, that means all the clones are potentially Force sensitive.
Not necessarily, because we know that the clones can have genetic differences, like through the Bad Batch, and like they're all like 99. Like, so we know that it is possible to have some genetic differences. So it's possible that Rex, for whatever reason, just happen to have it.
Yeah, but that's they're the bad batch. All the other clones are by default then the good batch, and midichlorians apparently are genetic for some reason.
Well, they're somewhat genetic, but not necessarily for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I pretend they don't exist.
Well,
you don't need to explain it.
That's also true. Ahsoka goes and lets Maul out of his prison. And
hold on, back up a second. The scene of Maul. Now the camera's inside the prison, and you hear just him shallowly breathing, and the clones approaching to let him out to execute him. What a well constructed scene that was.
That was, and just I love Maul here, and how impressed he is with Palpatine. Of I didn't even see this. Oh my God, the clones are betraying them. This is so brilliant. He's still this is the point. It's still in there. The Maul is a bad guy is still somewhere in there deep down.
And he's still learning.
He never stopped being a bad guy.
That's that's my point. The fact that he is still so impressed with Palpatine's plan. I like that. It's a small thing, but I like it.
Yeah, no. Game recognized game.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Maul gets out, and we see a Sith in a hallway running down against soldiers. Basically, a recreation.
Well, that's
of a
twice
Rogue
because
One
Ahsoka, when she first escaped the first ambush, she kind of did her own version of the Rogue One hallway scene, and then Maul had his own version.
The Maul one is to me a pretty much straight up reconstruction, literally with the lifting the Force, using the Force to lift someone up into the ceiling, and all of that. And
it's also definitely more brutal than Ahsoka's.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's also probably more brutal than Vader's. He chops a guy's arm off with a door.
Yeah.
I don't know. Vader slices someone in half in the hallway. They just cut away so you don't see it.
That's true, but
it's a lot of brutal stuff that get cut away from because ratings.
Keep in mind that Maul can't cut anyone in half because he doesn't have a lightsaber, but he does throw door panels that clearly look like they're slicing into people.
Yeah. Which also makes me think, because he's like, oh, Ahsoka, give me a fighting chance. Give me one of your lightsabers. And then he does this, and I'm like, you don't need it. You're fine.
Yeah, but he needs it if he's going to fight Ahsoka again.
Well, then there's then in the next episode when he destroys the hyperdrive, oh, what a good scene that was.
Yeah.
We get Rex into the med bay and some very let's just do some brain surgery, guys.
Yeah, quick brain surgery. Quick
But
force.
this is also the big other big tell of him Rex being force sensitive, with her tapping into the Force and using the Rogue One line, I'm one with the Force is with me, and we see Rex repeating it. I think that's pretty clear evidence that something is really seriously going on there.
I will counter that by saying, in case you are wrong, I more so see that as Ahsoka is now fully in Rex's brain, and it's a reflex for him to repeat what she says, because they're now almost like a Vulcan mind meld where they're kind of one right now.
Yeah. I could go either way on it. You could say it's showing Rex being Force sensitive, or it could just be showing, Ahsoka's mastery of the Force.
And I think you could say it could be both of those things.
Yeah.
Rex is able to wake up, and it's all of us. The entire Grand Army of the Republic has been ordered to hunt down and kill the Jedi Knights. Well, there's Order 66, guys.
Yep.
I love Grand Army of the Republic. Just wanted to throw that out there.
You just like anything that's feels fascist, don't you?
Only in Star Wars.
But why? Why do you have such shit opinions?
What is the name of the show? Finally, part 4, Victory and Death. And look, Dave Filoni has said that Clone Wars is the story of Ahsoka and the clones. The only way this was going to end was with Ahsoka and Rex and the clones. And yes, Maul is in there, and the Maul stuff here is great, but at its core, that's what this show is, and to end here is exactly what it should be.
Mm-hmm.
That said, starting with Maul, what a display of power with Maul of destroying the hyperdrive.
It was so visually stunning, and watching the ship come out of hyperdrive and
hyperspace.
What's hyperspace? And like what's even better about all that together is like the clones, besides Rex, have just a tunnel vision. They don't care that their ship's about to like, fall out of the sky. They just want to like kill Ahsoka. It's like that even adds.
I mean, they care a little bit that the ship is falling out of the sky.
But not really. I don't see them like their primary objective is to kill Ahsoka.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the clones in the
soldiers.
Cockpit, though. They're trying to...
They are trying to stop the ship.
Their mission isn't to live. Their mission is to kill the Jedi, okay?
That said, they're not, like, completely abandoning it. Because they're not like, okay, don't worry, the ship is going down. Let's just hang out and maybe she'll die when the ship goes down. They are trying to save themselves on some level.
Yeah, they can do two things.
Yeah. But yeah, the specific shot of the ship coming out of hyperspace was really well done. The fact, again, as we said before, like we had, like Jesse played at least a somewhat prominent role early on with being the one that Maul captured, and then to see him in front, standing in front of this group of the 501st who are wearing the Ahsoka, whose helmets have the painted Ahsoka on it. It's just like
they're not the 501st.
Yeah, they are.
No, the 501st is the Legion that's with Vader.
No. The 501st is Anakin's division. He split the 501st in half and gave half to Rex, and he has the other half. The other half is off murdering babies.
Okay.
No, younglings.
Younglings, yes.
When do you become a baby or a youngling from a baby?
I'm not.
No, you're just a youngling.
You're a youngling until you're a Padawan.
Okay.
So, kind of, I think, like another one of these just like incredible bits of storytelling here. You have this scene set up, and Ahsoka is like trying to be almost unreasonable in how, like, I don't want to be the one to kill them. They're good soldiers. And at first, it's like, why is Rex almost like saying like, no, we have to kill them? Like, these are his brothers. We know how much the clones care about each other. We like saw in the Bad Batch, like earlier in this season, like Rex going completely like almost overboard trying to save Echo, and it's like this seems almost like ridiculous. And then Ahsoka takes off his helmet, and the fact that one, Ahsoka knows, but B, the fact that this is clearly a setup for Rex shedding a tear, that this is destroying him, that he knows protecting Ahsoka and his friend is the right thing to do, but going after his brothers is just as depressing to him as it should be. I just love it. And again, we talk about like humanizing the clones, like getting to see Ahsoka taking his helmet off and a clone trooper shedding a tear in this moment, and comparing that to the rest of Order 66, which, like, I know there's the meme running around of like Rex fighting so hard against it and Cody being like, yep, kill that effer over there with Obi-Wan. It adds something to like the clones are not faceless, meaningless weapons. They are people.
Yeah. Although, I mean, I don't know what other reaction Rex could have in this situation. Like, if Ahsoka took off his helmet and he's, like, laughing or smiling at the idea of having to kill his brothers, it'd be a massive shift in tone.
He's like, this is where the fun begins.
Yeah. But, like, yeah, no, there's a lot going through that.
It turns out this final episode is just a pure comedy and, like, totally different tone. There was a good joke running around that's like, Dave Filoni's going to really pull it out from under you, and the final episode's just going to be a Jar Jar episode.
I would literally kill myself and then everyone else in the world.
That would have been amazing. I would have loved that.
Oh my god. He's not that much of a troll.
Yeah, but no, I think also, the initial reaction would be for, like, logically speaking, for people to be like, oh, we have to kill the soldiers because 1, they're in our way, 2, they're going to kill us, 3, like, there's just, like Rex says, there's no real way around it. But I think, Ahsoka making that choice to be compassionate, to try and find another way, like, I mean, Ahsoka's a better person than me, essentially, right? Because I probably would have been like, all right, let's just, like, they're in the docking bay, like, lower the shield, just space all of them, and then we'll be fine.
But the other thing that I like here is that in the very first initial moment, she definitely kills several clones when they're first trying to kill her. The difference is now that she's had a little bit of time to think, and it's kind of, in this moment, her making a choice. And I think that she knows pretty much deep down that they're all she thinks that they're all gonna die, and is not so much like being crazy as she is saying, if they are all gonna die, I'd rather them die without me being the one to kill them.
Yeah, I mean, I think deep down Ahsoka is probably also thinking of a way to get them all out of this, like, alive. Because, like, she is making she is on some level trying to argue for the more compassionate choice that she doesn't want to be the one to kill the clones, and, like, they're going to find a way out of it.
It's also not that, you know, the fact that, again, they're literally wearing her face on their helmets, like, not exactly easy to do.
Yeah, she at least now she does know that, like, oh, there's a chip. We can actually get it. If we get the chip out of all of them, we'll all be good.
I mean, yeah. I mean, okay, it depends, though. I mean, if, like, a bunch of soldiers are wearing helmets with your, like, face/cultures, like, face paint markings on it, I'm like, how...
Hey, Andrew, is that blackface?
Right? Like, I'm like, is that cultural appropriation? Is it blackface? Like,
I'm gonna say no, because Ahsoka is clearly touched by it. So, I'm gonna say it's okay.
Yeah, but like, of course, would they do that and not have her be touched by it?
Here's the other thing. I'm also going to say it's okay because not all of Ahsoka's race are the same color.
So it's her, it's not her race.
It's specifically Ahsoka, it's not all of them. However,
I just go to my birthday party.
I will admit, when I first saw it, I did have a moment of like, guys, this is okay.
Well, no, because like when you create one of them in like the Republic game, those are tattoos. So that being said,
well, no, the white face marking are tattoo/face.
Yeah, so then no, I would say it's not racist because they're just recreating her tattoo.
Oh, okay. Right, fine. So it's cultural appropriation.
Sure.
Yeah, but as long as she's okay with it, then it's fine.
Because she speaks for all to group.
But can you imagine though if she like instead was being touched, she was like, what are you guys doing?
Sure, that would be. You want to talk about igniting people on the internet? That would be hilarious. Imagine the reaction to these episodes if they just made the opening of this season just like a discussion of cultural appropriation in Star Wars. Oh, that'd be entertaining. One little thing I noticed, I was thinking about watching Ahsoka sort of just like deflect blast after blast. When we see Ahsoka in Rebels, there's a moment where she's watching an old training exercise from Anakin, and his line is, "Keeping your saber moving is the key to deflecting multiple adversaries," and it's, you know, essentially like how much Anakin has sort of built in the fact that they're fighting droids now, and they're sort of fighting these big droid battles where you're dealing with lots and lots of enemies at once. And again, it's like not a massive thing. Obviously, Ahsoka is, you know, clearly incredible and can handle herself very well. But I did like just just a nice little touch there of like the fact that was in there, and you kind of remember like how much Ahsoka fundamentally has been trained by Anakin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, also going into like the lore of like Jedi fighting styles, like this is not how it works out in real life, but like Ahsoka's like reverse-handed grip, theoretically, like if you ever read like lore in the games or lore in the EU, like the idea is like it covers more of your body, so it's better for blasting, deflecting blaster bolts. Like I forget which form number it is, but it's like Shien, Shien. And that's like the style that she first uses when she has her green lightsabers. And obviously she's using a modified version of it when she has both her lightsabers.
Yeah. All right. The last thing I'm going to talk about before the major ending, as Maul is trying to escape, Ahsoka does attempt to stop the ship from leaving, which does seem to me another one of these, like a bit of a call out to Rise of Skywalker, a movie we do not need to get into discussing right now. But just another thing of like, it does feel to me a little bit like Filoni was like, hey, all of these classic scenes from Star Wars, I'm going to do them, and I'm going to do them better than they were done before.
What if her hands started crackling with lightning and the ship got destroyed?
And then she screamed Maul out loud, really loudly, because she's incredibly upset that she killed Maul. But then it turns out that she didn't kill Maul.
Yeah, there was another ship just like on the
that we didn't see.
I actually forgot about that.
Oh my god, JJ, what are you doing?
Yeah, no. I mean, all like the great thing about Clone Wars is just how they're so good at creating narrative tension, even though you as the viewer, if you're like, you know, been watching things in the order they've come out, not the chronological order that take place in the universe, is, you know, you still have all this tension and like worry for the characters, and like you're still wondering, like, you know, how even if you know like Ahsoka and Rex are gonna get out of this, you're still like, how are they gonna get out of this? It seems like such an impossible
quick aside
situation.
for a second. We're all, you know, young, but at a position where one day we may have kids. Let's say your kid was like, I don't know anything yet, but I've heard about this Star Wars thing. I want to watch it. What order would you tell someone to watch Star Wars?
Release order. I would absolutely say release order.
I guess it depends on how old my kid is when
Yeah, I
they
don't know.
want to start watching Star Wars.
Did that also? That is also true.
For like in 2030,
Yeah.
it's not gonna age well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think if anything, I think the Phantom Menace ages worse because the CGI looks like really bad now. At least with practical models,
Yeah.
like it ages gracefully.
Yeah.
All right. So
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I think definitely. Okay, let's say I have an 8-year-old. They're interested in Star Wars. I'd start them on Clone Wars and Rebels, and then if they're really interested, they can see. Like, we'll watch the main trilogy. No, sorry, we'll watch the prequels and then the main trilogy, and we'll just leave it at that.
Well, the prequels are certainly enhanced with the Clone Wars as your backdrop. So.
Yeah, because
Yeah, I guess the main thing is, do you tell them about Order 66 before watching Clone Wars? I guess that's the main question, right?
No.
Like I said, because we are talking about, can we find that one person? Eventually, there will be people who will be born into the world and theoretically have the ability to watch this in chronological order versus release order.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure someone is going to cut together a Revenge of the Sith plus this arc of the show.
They did. It exists already.
It exists?
I'm sure, yeah.
All right, there we go.
That's what we're
I
gonna
mean,
do.
who knows? By the time we have kids, maybe they'll have remade the prequel trilogies.
It is Disney. They like
Clone Wars, the prequel trilogies, and then I won't have to worry about anything. It'll all just be good.
There you go.
It'll be fully.
Don't tease me like that.
All right, let's get to the end of all this. And ship crashes, Ahsoka and Rex are able to make it out, and just what a spectacular way to end all of this. And considering the timing, like we are like essentially at the end of, more or less at the end of Revenge of the Sith. I guess not in theory. The Anakin Obi-Wan fight hasn't happened yet, but just like it's just so brilliant. There's no dialogue, this great soundscape, the music. The Ahsoka building this memorial to the clones, Ahsoka just standing there in the robe and hood, letting the lightsabers drop. I love everything about it. And then to follow that up with then kind of a quote-unquote epilogue of Vader later on, like clearly it's quite a while afterwards. The whole thing is covered in snow. And like this is the best Vader imagery we've gotten since Empire Strikes Back.
Well, yeah, I mean, Vader also, again, just like Grievous did, look the best. Everyone's saying that Vader's animation just looked the best it's ever looked. Like, Vader, you still look through the red and you see, like, the red reflection of Anakin's eyes under the arm. Like, wow.
It just, in general, having, like, Vader against, the extreme black against the white background of the snow, it's like that is the Vader that was created in episodes 4 and 5. I think 6. I think Return of the Jedi doesn't do as well with that stuff. Whereas Lucas got more involved, but it's just that is the iconic image of Vader, and I love it. And that final shot of seeing Vader in the helmet, it just like there is no other way to end the show. That was straight up perfect.
Yeah, I feel like that's the type of thing where it's like, all right, so I have this shot idea. We're going to write an entire series leading up to this shot, but this shot I had since the beginning. Like, that's the type of thing it seemed like.
And
like,
you know what? Perfect. That's fine.
That's probably what happened. No?
I have very little else to say. It's just so.
The music I just listened to that song, that like end soundtrack again. Perfect.
Yep.
Shout out to I looked up Kevin Kiner.
Kevin Kiner and using much of John Williams' original work.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't have very much else to say. So I think we'll wrap things up. So we have a new guest here, so I guess we can talk about how we typically rate things around here. We rate on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being perfect, 0 being literally unwatchable. Technically, we are rating against all of, as I said in the start, I am calling this a movie, and we are rating this against movies, unless anyone has a serious objection to that.
Sure.
I mean, no matter what, how you ask me to rate it,
I think our ratings are all going to be the same regardless of what it is, but, you know, in general, I am treating this as a 60-minute movie. I think that that's, as much as, yes, it is 4 episodes, I think that that's what this was written to be, and I think that that's what it works as. So I think that's what we'll do. So, Cory, why don't you start off your final thoughts and your ratings, our last time with Clone Wars?
Well, that is sad for me to... Again, my appreciation, I'll say, for the prequel stems from the Clone Wars and successes of the Clone Wars, and what the voice actor of Maul said when he was like Ahsoka, who turned in from one of the most hated characters, like another Jar Jar, to one of the most popular characters in all of Star Wars, and the faceless like clones that were just disposable clones becoming again some of the most like interesting characters in all of Star Wars, and Maul and just all these characters that were so underdeveloped, and then not only did they become developed, they became some of the best characters in all of Star Wars. You couple that with the fact that the show right now fundamentally looking at the best technically it could work under, the best animation, the best music, the best fight choreography, some of the best just writing, the fact that they took the other scenes from Star Wars. I think every Star Wars movie has some representation in these 4 episodes. Like you were mentioning, there's Rogue One, there's Solo, there's all the sequels, there's things from other Star Wars movies. The fact that it feels like this belongs with Revenge of the Sith without retconning any of Revenge of the Sith, it's perfect. Like, there's nothing I would have changed. There's nothing that they could have done differently. Everyone knows where I'm going with this. It's easily a 10 out of 10. It's perfection, and I wouldn't change anything.
Chris?
10 out of 10. You know what that 10 out of 10 means? 10 out of 10 means that you can't go any better.
Yeah.
I like it.
But here's the thing. It's my favorite Star Wars movie. So, yes, it's 10 out of 10.
Okay. Fair.
I do ask people to justify their 10s, and I think Cory did a reasonable job justifying it.
That's fine. Yeah, I think, so the biggest thing about this whole end, 4 episodes is not only was it on its own really good, but in the greater context of all of Star Wars and all the whole universe that's built, it just enhanced everything. Yeah, going into episode 3, all that stuff, and just the pacing of it was really good. Just it added to anyone who loves Star Wars. It added to the story, which was bigger than anything I could have expected. So yeah, I'm not gonna give it a 10 out of 10, but it's like a 9-8. it's
you're a monster.
Oh my god! How dare you criticize this show so much? Taking off 0.2.
Here's the thing. This is why I'm giving 9-8, because I think that Dave Filoni could do something even better. That's why. Okay. Because I trust him with fucking anything now. Just do whatever the hell he wants. Just do it. Especially because I've been seeing him talking those Mandalorian documentary series on Disney Plus now. The man fucking knows Star Wars. He knows it. He loves it. He eats, sleeps, breathes it.
Yeah, no, he definitely has a passion for it.
So I trust him. Do whatever you want. Give him all the monies.
All right, Austin, your first time here, so why don't you let us know how'd you feel?
Yeah, obviously I rated it 10 out of 10. For me, because I think the best Star Wars material are the Clone Wars and then KOTOR and KOTOR 2. Because for me, Star Wars excels when it's telling a story about about that dichotomy of like good and evil and like what lies between. And that is what kind of like Ahsoka is for the series. Like when she or at least at this point in the series, because she's that first episode when she's talking to Obi-Wan and pointing out like the orthodoxy of the Jedi and like how rigid they become and like how ingrained in politics they become, while not realizing they're not actually following their philosophies of like like helping people. I think like the narrative really digs into kind of like exploring like you know the complexity and like the emotions of like recognizing everyone's humanity and like trying to do the best you can in a very like shitty situation. And that's kind of like a magic that sometimes gets missed out on a lot of like mainstream Star Wars material, but the potential's always there, so that's why I always keep coming back to this universe.
Yeah, I think this is as good as Star Wars has ever been, and I think that for that reason, I think it is. I will give this a 10 out of 10. We're talking about Dave Filoni and like trusting him with everything. I'm just going to list some of the episodes of television that Dave Filoni is credited as a director on. The Blue Spirit, The Siege of the North Part 1 and 2, Siege of the North Part 2, which is what I was originally saying was the greatest episode of television I'd ever seen. This entire arc, then Twilight of the Apprentice Parts 1 and 2 in Rebels. Those are some of my favorite episodes of television in anything.
You say he was directing on it or writing on it? Or
has a directing credit. As the director. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's wrote a fair amount of this stuff as well. But to see what he did with essentially book 1 of Avatar, which, this we would not be here talking about anything if not for Avatar, and then the stuff that he's done in Star Wars. Yeah, let Dave Filoni do whatever he wants. And I just think that if this is Dave Filoni at his best, given the ability to write what he wants, use a character in Ahsoka that has become my favorite character in Star Wars, and Rex, who is, really rapidly rise in the ranks of it, it's just important. And then, as Chris said, at its core, these Clone Wars saves so many things about Star Wars. If there's a thing that you like about Star Wars, it is done in the Clone Wars, and there's a very good chance that it's done better in Clone Wars than it is in the thing that you like about it. We spent a lot of time in this episode talking about things about The Last Jedi or Rogue One, how much this saves everything from the prequels. There's so many things that the Clone Wars does, and for this to be the culmination of it, it's unbelievable. And as just a 60-minute movie, I think this is perfect. There's nothing I would change, and that's clearly a 10. And then thinking about it in the context of Clone Wars and as a finale, I can't think of a finale that is this good as like truly the best thing in the show that it was a part of. And that's another thing that's pretty high praise, because we've had a few dud finales and some things, and this one is, this is clearly the best of Clone Wars, and it is the finale, which to stick the landing this well and under the amount of pressure that they were under as like building this up as important as it is, I just cannot speak more highly of it.
You're telling me you didn't love the finale of Game of Thrones?
We had that discussion already. All right, that was a year ago,
Or
All right, so we went a lot longer than we usually go, so thank you to Cory, Chris, and Austin for sticking with me for 2 hours. But hopefully this was reasonably entertaining.
Hungry.
Yes. We'll probably have some more Star Wars content if some more things happen. Maybe when Season 2 of Mandalorian drops, we'll talk about that. But we'll obviously always be here discussing...
Pretty much just be a continuation of Rebels.
We'll see.
It is, right? It's going to be Rebels.
There also is rumors that an Ahsoka show is in development, so that's also... We'll see if that happens. So.
And the Obi-Wan standalone series.
I thought that was delayed.
Well, it's still going to happen. It's not canceled.
Yeah, a lot of things may be delayed, but things the way they are.
I think that Star Wars is in a very weird and precarious place right now. But I will also say one last thing. It is very entertaining to me that at this point, Clone Wars has got to be the most universally loved thing in Star Wars.
Yeah, no fan on any side.
I've
You could be the
seen
biggest
criticism of the Siege of Mandalore arc from anyone.
No, you could be the biggest hater of the Disney sequels or the biggest lover of the Disney sequels or whoever the divide in fans are, and you're gonna love Clone Wars.
So, something going on here. But yep, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time.